Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next leadership lesson series in combination with Comparably and Entrepreneur Inc. I'm Jason Nazar, the co-founder and CEO of Comparably, and just really happy and excited to have Brian Niccol, the CEO of Chipotle, here with us today. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Jason. Yeah, great to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. As I was telling you when we were, doing our prep, we are all big customers. We ordered all the time in our family and for our company, and just been amazing to see the progression of your business into, also a digital company, how you've been managing through the pandemic, and really all the incredible success the company's had since, you've been on those last couple of years. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome to the series. For those of you that are coming back for, I think, our 25th episode now, thank you so much. Again, my name is Jason. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started and sold a couple of different businesses in the tech space. I'm an active investor and board member here in Southern California. Brian, I didn't even ask you, where are you based out of right now?
Yeah, so we're in Southern California as well. We're down in Newport Beach. So that's where I am right now.
Oh, great. Well, I'm just here in Los Angeles, so maybe next time we'll do this in person.
Yeah, that'd be fun. With burritos, preferably.
Yes, absolutely. And so this is a series that we do with incredible CEOs like Brian, talking about, if I knew then lessons. And so, Brian, I think every single person watching is going to be, a customer of Chipotle, loves your brand, loves your food. But in your own words, how do you describe the business today?
Yeah, look, it's I believe we're a unique restaurant company because of our commitment to our approach to food and the supply chain around food. We have a purpose around food with integrity that really hopefully results in cultivating a better world. And, what's behind that is we just have a commitment to the way we believe animals should be treated and raised, as well as the way that you should approach farming, whether it's regenerative farming, supporting local farms. We know it's the right thing to do for the animal, the plant, and frankly, the farm, but it also results in more delicious food. So it really is a win for those that are creating the food and those that are ultimately enjoying the food. And we're a company that prides ourselves on ingredients, great culinary. And then I think the thing that's really amazing about Chipotle is folks are able to customize exactly what they want. They can do it at really fast speeds. And, the company was founded on this idea that great food could be done fast. And fast food doesn't have to be, not good food. And I think that's what makes Chipotle special. And we've tried to stay true to that founding principle. And frankly, it's the rallying cry for our culture and our company. If you want to join our company, hopefully you're pretty passionate about the food and the way that we grow and treat the culinary practices to result in, the burritos and bowls that you create.
That's great. It's interesting being in tech. So many of us are, at companies that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. And you've got this incredible background, Procter Gamble, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. What's it been like to lead companies that I'm sure you were a customer of as a kid? You had this brand association with Taco Bell, with Pizza Hut. That's where we spent our youth.
Sure.
When you took over as the chief marketing officer and the CEO there, what did that feel like to be leading a brand that I'm sure was a big part of, what it was like for you coming up?
Yeah, so my first job was with Procter Gamble, and they've got so many iconic brands. And I remember my first brand assignment was Scope mouthwash, which I just thought that was like the craziest thing that I was working on. Scope mouthwash, which is something you had known forever, but it's like, well, here I am, giving people better breath, through Scope, and you find yourself. And ultimately, I ended up working on Pringles as well. And that's an example where it was the first time where I was working on a brand where I remembered as a kid, it was in my lunchbox. And you're like, well, this is crazy. I'm influencing what everybody gets to experience through the Pringles brand. And, leading a team to do that is really exciting. And, we got to do a lot of cool things with packaging and flavors. And, ultimately it was all driven by trying to understand how we could give people a better experience with Pringles. And that's where I frankly kind of realized I really liked the aspect of the food industry. And, ultimately the opportunity presented itself to work on Pizza Hut. And, you said it well. I remember a kid playing baseball, and afterwards we used to go to the Pizza Hut and we get pictures of Coke and pizzas, and the parents would get pictures of beer. And, it was where we went after baseball games. And so it was really kind of a fun moment for me to be a part of such a big brand and a iconic brand, to have the ability to influence. And, frankly, we put Pizza Hut online at the time while I was there, which was just amazing to see that whole evolution on that concept. And then I had the opportunity to go to Taco Bell, and that's another one where, I remember the opportunity was presented to me, and I literally was like, man, I can't wait to get my hands on that business, because it's another one of these iconic brands. And, there's just so much opportunity to have great marketing combined with, really good operations to give people access to food really quickly. And then insert Chipotle, which, I remember the first time I went to my first Chipotle, I was living in Cincinnati working at Procter Gamble, and the restaurant opened, and, we went, stood in line, and we were just like, man, this is amazing. Everybody says yes to everything you ask for, I'll take a little more rice, have a little more chicken, and everybody's nodding. Yeah, sure, we can do that for you. And, even at that time, I didn't totally understand the whole clean food point of difference that they were providing, but I did realize, wow, this food is really delicious. And then, over time, as I learned more about the industry and learned more about how our food is raised and travels through the supply chain to get to everybody, you realize, wow, Chipotle really was on the front end of, I think this new food movement, and then creating this category of fast casual. So I love working on brands that touch consumers. I love understanding, the behaviors and why people are motivated to be excited about one brand versus another. And, Chipotle is one of those special companies with a, very special culture that ultimately translates itself through its food and the experiences that we provide. So I consider myself a pretty lucky guy. This is a great job, great company. So with a lot of great people.
My last technology company, I sold it to Intuit, maybe 7 years ago or so. And I remember it was such an interesting experience, because as a startup founder, all you're trying to do is get people to know your product, get to know your brand. So everything is trying to amplify your brand and get it out there almost by any means, necessary.
Yeah, sure.
And then, I got to Intuit, where obviously they're, QuickBooks and TurboTax, two of the most iconic brands in the technology space. And it was just such a different thought process and methodology of how to protect that brand. What's it been like for you? How do you manage being the steward of a brand that has, multi-decade histories before you and all that brand equity, while also being the person responsible to grow that brand and maybe create it into something even new and bigger? Like, that's got to be a pretty tricky, difficult balance.
Yeah, look, I think, it's a great question, because you need to understand what makes the company unique and why people have this attraction to your brand. And the more you can enhance that, what makes your company attractive or your product attractive, you got to go all in on that. At the same token, you have to figure out how you can eliminate any friction or things that are keeping people away from your brand. And, that's kind of like the simple model that I've always used, which is, how do I give people more access to what makes our company unique? And then how do I continue to elevate what makes our company unique? And, Chipotle is very much centered on the ingredients, the culinary behind it. So, we're never going to walk away from, great culinary. We're never going to walk away from ensuring that the ingredients we provide are raised to a different standard. And, the good news is, you do that really well, you'll end up with a delicious burrito or a bowl every single time. then we add in things like technology, right? And, somebody was just asking me the other day, like, are you now a technology company? You got almost $3 billion in digital sales. And, my answer to that is, look, we love and embrace what technology can do to get people access and help our employees do their job, in a way that they're excited to be at work. But we're always going to make sure that we've got great ingredients, great in culinary. And how do we use technology or other tools to make the experience more accessible, less friction, easier for people to have access, and just enhance our value proposition. So, since the day I got here, and this is probably something I learned from my time at Procter Gamble too. One of the things that was great about my experiences at P&G is in the brand management organization, you kind of switch brands every 18 to 24 months. And, one day you're working on, mouthwash, and then the next day, you're working on Pringles. Very different businesses from a consumer standpoint. But what I learned there was, hey, look, you got to understand what makes the brand unique and why people are in love with your brand. Once you understand that, then you can figure out how you innovate from there and push the growth, pedal down. And, I'm probably really fortunate that I got to start my career at P&G to see what it's like to switch brands or businesses, and do it in a way where you can respect what is special about this new business. You can't apply everything from this business to that business. You have to take the time to understand what makes this one go versus the other. And, luckily I was surrounded by a lot of great people too at P&G, which, I'm confident I wouldn't be as good of a marketer or a general manager if I didn't have the opportunity to see people that were really good at it, already around me, so there's a huge thing around learning and, not being afraid to ask about things you don't know.
Yeah. You've had this really incredible career in, quite honestly, a pretty short period of time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks watching are going to say either A, I don't know how I'd ever get to be like a chief marketing officer or CEO of, a brand that I grew up loving, or they might be telling themselves like, I want to get there. I want to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
As you look back over the last 20 years, like what do you feel like is the biggest like secret to your success? If you had someone in their early 20s come to you and say, I want your career, Brian, like what's the roadmap you're going to give them?
Yeah, look, I would say, be willing to put yourself out there, right? It sounds like, Jason, you've had success starting up tech companies and selling them. And, you clearly were willing to say, what, I've got an idea. I'm going to go after it and I'm going to see it through. And it doesn't always go exactly how you initially planned. And you got to have the courage to say, okay, this is working. This isn't working. Let's do more of what's working and learn from what's not working. And I've kind of just applied that throughout my whole career. And, I was willing to step forward and say, what, I'm happy to go try and turn that around. I think I can turn it around. I've got an idea, and, I think that is the biggest thing that people need to be aware of is, it's not enough to just have an idea. You got to be willing to then be accountable for the idea and not be afraid to learn in the process. And, I've kind of been one of these folks that always is curious. And, whether I was in my first job as the scope brand assistant or assistant brand manager, to now in my Chipotle role, I'm still learning in this role. And, as you get further into your career, I've always taken the time to make sure that I've got great people. And, my kind of approach is, do they fit culturally? Do they share the passion for learning? Do they share the passion for, the accountability? And then, do we think we can go make some big things happen, and not be afraid that not everything's going to go the way you would hope, but more often than not, there's a lot more good than bad that comes out of, taking the risk and stepping forward. So, I've been pretty fortunate. A lot of things have worked with the ideas that I brought forward, but I would say a lot of it has to do with just not being afraid to learn throughout the whole process. That's a big piece of the puzzle.
What did you feel like was your first really big break in your career, and how did you take advantage of it?
Yeah. So look, I think one of the big opportunities for me was when I had the opportunity to work on Pringles, and it was a turnaround situation. And I was the brand manager, and there was a gentleman there, Jamie Agasti, who was the general manager. And, it was just an amazing experience because, what I loved was we were focused on innovating, but at the same time, we were focused on getting the core business right. And, the core business back then was, the can, that we were selling at Walmart. And, if that wasn't, correctly priced with the right economics across it, it was hard to make the innovation work. It was hard to make a lot of other things work. So, I learned quickly, hey, you got to get your core strong while you innovate around the core. And, that was a big experience. And then I would also tell you, my very first job, I happened to have a great boss. This guy, Craig Capozzo, took the time, to give me coaching to make me better early in my career. And, there were lots of people at Procter Gamble, I could rattle off names where, one of the things I learned, and this is what I would tell everybody is, people like to be asked, hey, how did you do that? Why did that work? Why did that not work? And people are very willing to share their stories. Oddly enough, they don't get asked that often. So when you do ask, they're like really excited to share. And I discovered that at my time at P&G, and P&G fostered this culture of, hey, look, it's a big idea for you to develop others. And so I was fortunate that I started at a company where that was a key principle of the culture. And then that traveled with me at Yum as well. And so, now that I'm in the top role, I'm trying to make sure that I create a culture where everybody is confident and comfortable to say, hey, I'd like to learn about this. And also I'm asking my leaders to make sure that they're passing on their experiences that have made them successful. So, that was early on in my career where I think it gave me some nice opportunities. And, fortunately, there's been a lot of interesting inflection points for me in the various jobs that I've had.
Yeah, absolutely. How has your management philosophy changed over the last, 15 years? Like, how do you lead differently and think differently? Because obviously you must have been a really successful manager 15 years ago because you kept taking on more and more responsibility, bigger teams. So it's not as if you were doing anything that wasn't great then. So how do you think differently today about management than you did maybe 15 years ago?
Yeah, look, I think the thing I've learned over time is, earlier in your career, right, you're trying to figure out how you can make an impact. And just as you evolve in your career, it's like, well, how do you make an impact through other people? And, oh, by the way, you need to be focused because people need to know what is success, right? As you get further into your career, it becomes more and more important to communicate to people what does success look like and why do you believe you can get there? And when you get that clarity out into the organization, what's great is then all the ideas start bubbling up around this idea of how we can be great in this strategy, right? We've got a very clear digital strategy at Chipotle. I love the fact that I've got an organization full of people that are trying to figure out how we make more access digitally. And there's awesome ideas coming all over the place. Now, my job is to try and help sort through and allocate the resources. So we work on the biggest ones first. And then, the same thing's true for like food and menu challenges. So, I would say that's how it's evolved, right? Like when you first get started, I was hopping on a plane, going to the plant to go look at how you could, do different flavors on Pringles chips. Fast forward to where you are today, and it's like, now you would have more of the, and I actually got to see this, firsthand because the gentleman, Jamie, was in charge of it. He was like, hey, look, I think we could do customized flavors for our retailers. So he had this idea, and then, I had to go figure out the nuts and bolts of it. But, I learned a lot through that process and understanding the power of just clarity. It's like, hey, look, we need to have customized solutions for retailers. We went off, set out to do it. And I learned a lot from just that power of like focus. It's like, we're going to get the core business right from an economic standpoint, and then we're going to innovate in a way that the retailer is going to care, and the customer. And so, I'd say in general, the thing I always try to bring to our teams is, look, the customer experience has to be a home run. In our business, the way you get to a great customer experience is you got to give your employees a great experience. They got to be proud of what they're doing. If the employee is not excited to be at our restaurant, they're not going to be excited to serve our guests. And, we try to zero in on just simple things like that, where, look, everybody in our company can understand if our employees are having a great day, our customers are going to have a great experience. That's a simple proposition. There's a lot to make that all happen, from project work to new ideas and new innovation, but that's at the core of this.
Yeah. All right. So I prepped you for this. We're going to do the time machine question. If you could take a time machine back into your 20s and you could give that Brian any piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Look, I would, I know. I thought a lot about this actually. And the thing I would tell myself back then is go ask more questions, connect with more leaders. You deserve to be at the table. There is an element, at least for me early in my career, where I very much respected the hierarchy. It's like, well, geez, I'm an assistant brand manager. Should I be talking to the president of the division, or should I wait for him or her to ask me, to talk? And what I would go back to myself is like, hey, you know what? They actually want to hear ideas. They're actually very willing to share experiences. And it's not, I probably had this belief that every interaction you're being judged. And it's like, are you winning or losing in every interaction? And, looking back on it, it's actually not every interaction. It's the kind of, are you growing? Are you developing? Like what I think, at least I know what I look for in people is like, how's this person growing? Are they developing? How are they contributing? Are they doing it in a positive way? I would go back and tell myself like, hey, not everything is, a win or lose situation. There's a process here of learning, building your experiences, building your confidence, and hey, don't be bashful. And actually people like to share. As much as you can be intimidated by titles and people's experiences or successes, the sooner you can get that out of the way, the better I think your growth will be.
Yeah. All right. So same thing for 10 years ago. If you could take a time machine 10 years back and give yourself any professional or personal piece of advice, what would that be and why?
10 years ago, I would say, and I really learned this from my time working with David Novak at Yum. He had a very compelling class. It was around taking people with you. And the sooner you can learn how to take your ideas and get those ideas to become other people's ideas and for them to engage on it versus it just being your idea, the more powerful your organization will be. And frankly, more powerful the idea will be. There was a while there where you're like, well, geez, what else can I do? And this is the wrong statement. Like, what else can I do to make this a success? That's the wrong statement. The statement is, what else needs to happen for our organization so that this idea becomes a success? And, the sooner I would have learned that, I think the better I would have been. And, luckily, I got to see somebody do it firsthand, and, I picked that up along the way. And, I try to practice that every way I can. So, that's probably what I would go back and tell myself 10, 15 years ago. It's like, hey, you got to learn how to really get the organization to move and be excited about this and lead through others, as opposed to just you kind of putting your shoulder into it, saying like, I know this is right, I'm going to get it done. You got to get the organization to say, I know it's right, and the organization's going to get it done.
Yeah, I love that. It's probably something I'm still working on, very candidly.
Yeah, all of us are, right? It's like it's the biggest challenge for a leader.
Yeah. So let's dive into that for a moment, because I think there's a lot of people that are going to be watching that could really benefit from maybe some of the specific and tactics of how you do it, right? Obviously, anytime anyone on our teams has their own idea or initiative, they're going to work that much harder. They're going to want to see it through more because they feel more emotionally connected to it. When you have an initiative or an idea that you believe strongly can, drive an important outcome for Chipotle, how do you make that your teams? What are the actual specific steps that you take to make folks feel like, okay, well, I'm now a part of this, or this is now my idea that I've added on to it, to get the magic that really comes from that process?
Yeah, look, it's going to be it's going to be an underwhelming answer here, but it is communication, and the willingness to listen as part of the communication. I think sometimes people think communication means you're speaking all the time. And actually, the process of communication is listening, taking the feedback to make the approach more inclusive and have multiple owners in it, right? Now, that's not to say you're giving up what the idea is, right? You got to have conviction for what the idea is, but you have to be willing to listen and take action on that feedback so that people see that they are part of it. And look, it's something I always still work on. My wife gives me a lot of feedback on plenty of times where I'm not listening. And you need, and the reason why I bring Jen up is you need somebody like that. Like I've got, she's amazing. I lucked out on that side of things. You got to find a partner like that in your work world too, where, they can be honest with you and say, hey, look, you're not listening. Or, you know what, go harder on this. And that's the kind of team that I've tried to build with me, is folks that, they'll be honest with me. They'll, help me listen, and they will help me, see where we're making wins in the organization. Let's go reinforce the wins along the way. And I think that's the other piece of the puzzle, is reinforcing the wins and demonstrating that the organization or the team or the individual, they were a big reason why we have that win, and the strategy's working. You're contributing. The organization's listening. We want more ideas, not less. But along the way, we can't be afraid of, saying yes to things that are working and saying no to things that aren't working. And I think people appreciate that transparency, so I've worked hard on that. And, I try to get quickly to a yes and quickly to a no. And, then take the feedback and maneuver accordingly. So, if you were to ask my team, they know I hate kind of the term, and I always get asked this question, like, well, what do you think the new normal is? And I'm like, I don't know why, but that's like nails on a chalkboard for me, because that makes, it kind of implies you're going to be complacent and things aren't going to change anymore. And I just believe, change is part of the process of staying connected and staying relevant with, the consumer experience that you want to provide. So, kind of a lot to unpack there, but, it's something I'm excited about and passionate about. And it's something I keep working on.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into the culture aspect of things. It's funny, when I asked you the first topic that you'd want to talk about, you brought up employee value propositions, which I got to tell you, every HR leader globally would probably be cheering for you, that as a CEO, you even know what an EVP is, let alone want to make that the first thing you talk about. And you obviously have this incredible people leader in Marisa, who we've had a chance to, do some sessions with in the past before, and everyone loves her.
Yeah.
I want to show folks, you're in such an interesting situation. These are your real employee scores on Comparably. You've got amazing feedback. You've got great scores from women and from people of color. You all been recognized in so many of the awards that we do. You've got great scores as a leader in the leadership team. You're in a
Jake, I'm blushing. Those results are pretty good.
Yeah, it's your own employee feedback. And one of the things that a lot of people bring up in your employee reviews is the change that they've felt and seen over the last couple of years too, for the folks that have been around longer. So,
Yeah.
kudos to you and your team for all you're doing. It's got to be really challenging to manage a business with meaningfully different employee segments. I have all knowledge workers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're a little bit more clustered in terms of age range. Obviously, diversity in our own hiring is such a priority, but we don't have, retail workers or blue collar workers. You manage two pretty distinct employee bases of folks that are in your restaurants, managing the customer experience, and then your corporate employees. How do you think about building like an inclusive culture for all of those employees and building an employee value proposition that works for both of those employee segments?
Yeah, look, I first of all, what I would tell you is I think about it as what are the values of our company, and whether you are just joining our company as a college student looking for their first job. I really hope the reason why you're looking for your first job at Chipotle is because you buy into our values, you buy into our purpose. And I can't emphasize how important that is for me at every level in our organization. I find when I go into our restaurants, the managers, they're very much aligned with these values, around teaching and tasting Chipotle, authenticity lives here, the movement is real. These things all matter to our restaurant leaders. And then when it matters to them, it matters to their team and the culture that they create in their restaurant. And, I hope the culture in the restaurant matches the culture in our support centers. And, I say this to people all the time, like, look, if you don't like being in restaurants, you probably won't like being at Chipotle. Our business happens in the restaurant. And, the thing I also love about our business is it's an opportunity for everybody. There's nothing more exciting than seeing promotions and having the ability to talk to somebody where they just got promoted from, apprentice to manager, from manager to, certified training manager, becoming a field leader. I can't remember the number of promotions we had last year, but it was in the tens of thousands. And I mean, that's pretty amazing. Like, it's an honor, right? To be a part of a place where so many people can succeed, regardless of maybe where they started. And I think that's what makes our company special. One of the things I've committed to everybody is, look, I got to figure out how to continue to make sure people understand our jobs at our restaurants are great jobs with great people that result in great careers. And everybody needs their first job. Hopefully we're a place that is in your consideration set for your first job. And then hopefully when you experience the culture, the people, the opportunity, the growth, you'll say, you know what, I'd like to do the next job here and the next job. And, that's what I think makes our place really special. I think the experience you have at Chipotle, and I'm happy to say this too, like there are folks on our board where their kids just got their first job at Chipotle. And, that to me is a testament to our culture, because when you're willing to let your kids work somewhere, and maybe I'm speaking now more as like a father here, but it's like you take a lot of care and comfort and concern in where your kid's working, because you want to make sure they're surrounded in a good environment and they're learning what it takes to get the job done. I firmly believe our company will only be as good as the people we can attract, and what those people believe they can contribute then will drive our growth. And, so I like to spend a lot of time on that aspect of our people. And fortunately, I've got a great leader in Marisa to help us navigate it. But if you were to talk to everybody on my executive team, I think they would all share the same sentiment, which is, you know what, we have to attract great people that believe in our culture and purpose. And we do that, good things will happen.
Yeah. I'm curious to think how you try to stay ahead of the competitive curve. It's really amazing when you think, I don't know of an industry really that has more competition than yours. I mean,
Yeah.
you literally each, first off, I mean, I've run subscription businesses and SaaS businesses, so I have the benefits of recurring revenue, right?
Yeah.
Your consumer has to vote with their dollar every single day, every single week, and they have to choose to keep coming back to you. You're literally dealing with hundreds and hundreds of competitors because every single local restaurant, and it's interesting because the advent of, you know, Uber Eats and Postmates and Instacarts in some ways extends your reach, but it also gives you that many more competitors where each consumer has so many more choices.
Yeah.
How do you think, like, what's to you, and you talked about always needing to change, like, how does Chipotle really stay ahead of that curve? I mean, when you have so much competition and there's so many choices the consumer has, how do you keep winning that business back, you know, each day and each week over and over again?
Yeah, look, I think this is, a commitment that we have to staying true to what makes Chipotle unique. And, to me, the best offense on this is staying on your front foot, right? It's like, how do I continue to experiment? I call it a stage gate process, but I want to have constant experimentation, because sometimes you're surprised on where you get some traction that you wouldn't have anticipated. And, that has been kind of our mantra, right? So we're experimenting with our restaurant design. We're experimenting with the technology that our teams use, as well as the technology that we provide to our customers. We're experimenting with, menu items. We're experimenting with how we lead people on ingredients. Frankly, we're working hard in the supply chain too, of, all right, how do we get more people to raise cattle the way we believe is the right way to raise cattle? So, it is an organization that's just, this is why I hate the term normal, because I want to always be in this experimentation mode without abandoning our core. It's like, you can do both. You can be just highly convicted to your core business while you experiment on how you continue to evolve the company. And that's kind of been the central approach. One of the things I love about the restaurant industry is arguably it's the most creative, resilient group of entrepreneurs you're going to find out there, right? I don't know how many thousands of new restaurants open every year. Unfortunately, there's also thousands of restaurants that don't make it past a year. But these guys are resilient. They're entrepreneurial. You can learn so much just by going out and eating and seeing what's happening. What are the experiences people are loving? What are the experiences people are leaving? And the more you can understand that and put that application into your business, I think that's how you stay relevant, stay in touch. And that's the key. I think, we're very fortunate to have a lot of youthful customers, and, staying relevant, staying in touch with kind of that group is really important, because, you may be working well with the 20-year-olds, but if you only stay with those 20-year-olds that ultimately become 30-year-olds and then 40-year-olds, next thing you know, you wake up and you're a 40-year-old business, and you're like, well, wait a second, we need to be the 20-year-olds again. So how did we lose touch? And, so I'm always agitating a little bit of like, hey, are we on the front end of culture? Are we on the front end of food? Are we on the front end of experiences? And if we are, then great, let's go experiment in those places.
Yeah. Who else do you look to in your industry and just say, I really like what they're doing here? Like, what are some things that, you've been impressed by?
I find a lot of the inspiration more from the small concepts that you see regionally. I think there's a lot of interesting experimentation, frankly, going on, right? Whether it's these more digitally forward restaurants, some creative approaches with plant-based cuisines, as well as just doing street tacos better. It's like you see, I'll tell you, I don't know if you've ever like gone to Austin. They've got all these food trucks and stuff, and it's like, it's fun to just walk around and see what's going on in the food truck scene. So I try to find the inspiration from, the creative group of, what's happening kind of on the front end of food, because I always want our organization to behave like, we're still one restaurant that opened in Denver on Evans Avenue, I never want to be seen as the big bureaucratic, slow moving organization that's afraid to learn, you know? So I think the best way to keep that out of our system is to surround yourself with, people that are, entrepreneurial in spirit. They recognize the power of scale, but aren't afraid to push the limits.
Yeah. How's it been for you all as over this last year you had to lead in a remote environment? What did you feel like were the lessons that you tried to apply to make your business as successful as possible, and obviously affects your business so much because it's inherently, an in-person experience?
Yeah. Well, look, that's the one thing I remind people is, we've got 2,800 restaurants where close to 90,000 employees were going into their office every day throughout this pandemic. And so, I continue to get to our restaurants throughout it all. And then we also really amped up communication going to and from the whole organization. The more we could keep our 100,000 employees informed, the better I found we operated. And, I got to tell you, the remote thing, it works. We make it work. The technology works. But I prefer being with people, shoulder to shoulder around the table, debating the merits of whatever the topic is at hand, or being in our restaurant, talking to folks, finding out, hey, is this working? Is this not working? What are you seeing? What are customers saying about our new queso? It's like, you got to be where the transaction occurs. And that's not sitting in your house on, a WebEx. That is getting out there with your colleagues that are making experiences. And you got to see those experiences firsthand. And then you got to have the discussion about those experiences, I think, together. So, it was something that luckily the technology worked. I think our culture was strong enough so that even though we weren't together, the culture was still carried forward, those values we talked about earlier. And then, what, our leaders made an effort to communicate and be transparent with what was happening. And, we also committed to getting into our restaurants.
You talked a little bit earlier about the, when we were prepping, the challenges, right, and opportunities of, and when you're a public company, driving growth, staying true to your values. You've had this really kind of unprecedented, your stock has been incredible over the last 18 months, and it really outperformed a lot of, your peers and counterparts, right? And so a lot of folks are voting with their dollars saying, I believe in this business and where it's going. How do you feel like you manage the demands and expectations of those quarterly earnings versus staying true to your values versus looking forward to the future and being willing to do that experimentation that may not always hit right away, but that if you do it over and over again is going to yield the kind of results you want over time?
Yeah, look, I've kind of just taken the approach that the best thing I can do is ensure that we are creating value. And the best way to create value is ensuring that I've got great people focused on the right things. And, whether it happens in the first quarter, the second quarter, third quarter, to me, ultimately, you'll see the progress is being made. And either you agree that, hey, we're going to create value over time, or you don't. And, time will be the judge of whether or not these strategies are right. But I really try to push myself to make sure that what we're focusing on is, when I got to Chipotle, our average unit volumes were less than $2 million. And, right out of the gate, I looked and, the company at its peak was doing 2.5 million. And so right away, we're like, all right, we're going to get back to 2.5 million. And the way I shared it with everybody is, but that's not an end point. That's just, part of the journey. And we're going to hit 2.5 million, and we're going to be talking about how we get to 3 million or 3.5 million. And I believe the strategies and the culture and the people that we have are going to enable us to get that growth. And, that's ultimately what I zero in on is like, look, we're going to grow. And there's always headwinds and tailwinds that pop up. And you got to have an organization that has the flexibility to be able to respond to that, change accordingly. But you can't lose conviction on, the key strategies for how you're going to get your growth. And that's kind of what we've done. And knock on wood, it's being rewarded by our shareholders. And, it's also fortunately providing great rewards for all of our employees too.
Yeah. In every interview I do, I have a set of questions I like asking. And one of them is, what's your work superpower? What do you do better than anything else? And it's funny, I kind of feel like I now know your work superpower, which is you can take situations that are, difficult or challenging, or maybe a little off track, and set an important goal and like just drive, a team towards that outcome of success. You've done it over and over again. How do you do it is my question. What's obvious, there's lots of people that walk into situations, whether it's Pringles or Taco Bell or Chipotle, that are dealing with the same challenge. It's not like nobody saw that 2.5 million before you, but you must have led and done something differently than the people that came before you to get to a different outcome. And so what is that secret sauce of yours?
Yeah, look, what I try to do, Jason, is I do really try to take what are complicated issues or thorny issues and figure out, all right, what are the few things we're actually going to simplify down to say we're going to go achieve those elements. And that is the key mission right now, right? Like for us, when I first got here, the key mission was digital make lines, mobile pickup shelves, get them in every restaurant. Let's go. And, we got it done in, I think, pretty remarkable time. And, nobody knew a global pandemic was looming, but what I definitely knew was customers demanded more access with less friction. And we had, I think, a unique advantage with already having second make lines. We just needed to digitize them and create clarity for the customer where to pick it up. And, you boiled it down. Are we after an entire digital ecosystem? Absolutely. But we boiled it down to some very simple things that we wanted to get accomplished, and along the way, we also wanted to launch a rewards program, and we kept it very simple. It's like great app, easy execution in the app, digitize those lines, pick up shelves, and we'll launch rewards. And the digital ecosystem is going to be present at Chipotle. And there's a lot more work going on than what I just iterated. But those were the key milestones where everybody knew we were working towards them. And so, on food, it was the same thing too, right? It's like, hey, we got to make sure the ingredients we're serving are terrific. And when I first got here, people were telling us our queso wasn't terrific. So it's like, well, let's go make great queso. Like, we know how to make great culinary. Let's go make great queso. And, lo and behold, there we are. We got feedback that our steak wasn't great. We provided great carne asada. So it is, and you could be overwhelmed with like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this menu? Or you say, you know what, there's a couple things that I know we can do really well. We're going to do them really well. We're going to prove to ourselves that we can do these things really well. That just builds more confidence in the organization to take on the next challenge. And, that's what I've tried to do in every job that I've taken on. You find where you think the big opportunity is, and then you boil it down to a stated objective that people can see how they can make an impact and achieve it.
So when you think of what Chipotle is going to look like 10 years from today, what's that company, and what are you excited to build for the future?
Yeah, look, I think we are going to be the company that defines how food is prepared and how you access it. And, the level of customization that we provide, the speed at which we provide it, the quality of the ingredients, I think that's going to define what restaurants will hold as like, that's the standard of entry. If you want to be a meaningful restaurant company, you're going to have to hit those standards for performance. And for us, I get really excited about all the growth that comes with that. Today we only have 2,800 restaurants. We'll have 6,000 plus restaurants in the not too distant future, just in the United States. And I believe clean food, great culinary, customized, terrific value. I think that works around the world. So, I think you're going to see our company starting to move beyond just the United States in a meaningful way. And I think you're going to continue to see us lead in the accessibility for people to have access, whether it's digitally or through technology, or, I don't know what next cool thing is going to be created from a technology standpoint, but, we're experimenting, right? We're trying autonomous, driverless vehicles to what we can be doing in our kitchens to make the employee's job easier, better, more consistent. So I don't know what those things will be. What I do know is we'll be a company that's experimenting and hopefully be on the front end of it. And I think we're going to have a lot of growth. And, I think we're going to change the way food is farmed and raised and ultimately brought to everybody, so that you can have access to delicious, whole, nutritious food. And, that gets me energized. And oh, by the way, along the way, we're going to hopefully help a lot of people create a lot of career opportunity, because as we grow, our people will grow, and, we'll change communities and we'll change families' lives, which is going to be just amazing as well.
Yeah. Well, we're in a unique position of getting to see lots of companies' cultures here at Comparably. I think we have something like 70,000 global companies now that we have employee feedback on. And, food overall and fast casual is an industry that, doesn't always have the highest employee scores, and you've been off the charts. To see that combined with, this incredible business performance and how much your team loves your direction and you and the leadership team, it's very easy to see after just a little bit of time today why so many folks are so excited about working at Chipotle and being customers. And, you're part of our household and the food in our, for our team here. And, thank you so much for your time today, Brian. It was really amazing to hear both your story and about the company. I think a lot of us would like to get to work for a leader like you and doing what you're doing and setting the example for folks like me, so that, for those of us building businesses, we can keep learning from you.
Well, look, thanks for having me. Thanks for bringing Chipotle into your family. It's always nice to be a part of it. One thing that's fun about the restaurant company is, right, people share special moments around food. And so, I love the fact that we're a part of those moments. And hopefully, I don't know about you, but usually that's how I get my kids to talk a little bit is, putting some Chipotle and quesadillas in front of them, gets them talking a little bit more. So, which is great.
Well, my 3-year-old lights up when he sees the bag of chips. I wish he would have chicken and guac and steak, but
that's great.
Chips, and there's really nothing left for anyone else. So he's always happy to see you guys with us. For all of you that are continue to join us, thank you so much. Good luck in your continuing work adventures. It's so great to see life return back to some of the experiences that we were all looking for and being in person. And thank you again, Brian, for sharing your time today. I know you got so much on your plate. We're going to keep doing this series with incredible CEOs like Brian, and so stay tuned here. We've got a pretty amazing lineup coming up, and thank you all, and be safe. Enjoy the summer.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me be a part of it. Take care, everybody.